Here we go. Okay, let's get started. Share my sound. Okay, let's present. Here we go. Welcome to Screenwriting 101 with Mercedes Garcia. Hi, my name is Mercedes Garcia. Just a little bit about me so that I have a little bit of credibility. This is where I've worked. I worked in development for Nickelodeon, the kids TV show. Guerrilla Flicks, they make Jackass and Ridiculousness. Jackass 4 is coming out soon, so go ahead and check that out. Tripa Studios, founded by Mexican actor Eugenio Derbez, most known for his Overboard remake, How to Be a Latin Lover, and his new Apple TV series Acapulco, which you should all check out. American High, they did Hulu's Big Time Adolescence. The Strasbourg International Film Festival in programming, and now the Alexander Valley Film Festival. So that's pretty cool. Okay, this is where I went to school. I got my degree from Cal State Northridge in specifically screenwriting. So that's pretty cool. And I will be class of 2024 for my MFA in specifically screenwriting because I found out I love screenwriting specifically. Okay, some accomplishments. A few of my scripts have placed in Holly Shorts, Scriptapalooza, LA International, and a short film I produced just won Best Drama. So that's cool. Okay. That's me. All right. I say this every time, but literally, I think it's so important. I think everybody should ask themselves, why screenwriting? I mentioned that I wanted to write for books at first, and then like for video games. But I settled on screenwriting just because I truly love this audio visual medium. And specifically when it comes to setting, writing it is a little bit tricky for the screen. Let me put this over here. Writing is a little bit tricky for the screen because you've got to be super concise and you've only got for a feature length film like 90 to 120 pages to flesh out your whole story. Whereas a book, you know, you've got like 300 pages, 500 pages. You can take your sweet old time. So yeah, just think about that. Okay, let's talk setting. So what is it? Right? That I mean, we all kind of know that it's basically like a location and like time frame. That's pretty easy. But if you really start thinking about it, it becomes a little bit more complex than that. So you can think of it kind of like in three types. Temporal setting, which like temporal means time. So the time period in which your story takes place. Does it take place in present day, like the 1600s, in the future? And literally the time span in which it takes place. So does it take place over the course of a day, an hour, 20 years, 5 years, 6 months, right? Okay. Environmental setting. We like to think of it as kind of where does it take geographically, but stories have kind of evolved past that. So we can think about it not just on this plane on Earth, but kind of like what planets if you're doing a sci-fi film. Does it take place on Earth, on Mars, like in our solar system, in space, in another galaxy? Where are we going? So, you know, and then on here, you know, England, America, the ocean, a remote island that has no name, stuff like that. And then your individual setting, so is the place inside of that geographic location. So it can be literally like Earth is your environmental setting, and then like this remote island can be an individual setting if you want to make your story that broad. Or it can be it takes place in America, New York. That's your individual setting. So it's just cool to think about it in terms of like big to small and how things are relative. So for an example, Harry Potter, it takes place in the mid to late 90s. I know the movies, they do like present day, but the books I think end in like 98. The environmental setting, again, broader geographically, England, individual setting, a smaller Hogwarts generally, right? And then it moves to like Hogsmeade, and like even smaller than that, like the Gryffindor common room, this little area where like Harry's bed is. So, you know, think about things like that. Okay. And then that brings me to smaller things, your immediate environment. So again, going from big to small, let's say that I, live in a house, right? And then this is my room. How does my room feel? It's kind of cold right now. My hands are really, really cold. My feet are really cold. Hey, if you guys have your mic on and some background noise, if you can mute, I'd appreciate that. Okay.
They're still pretty good at that.
Oh,
Well,
maybe
first
I will have
don't
to.
remember the breath.
Okay, guys, let me just mute these people. Participants. Okay, sorry guys, I've muted all of you. But if you want to speak, just type it in the chat or like raise your hand and I can unmute. Okay, let's go back. Here we go. Okay, so how does my room feel, right? So it's cold. I've got some lights here that are kind of warm in tone. What does it sound like? I've got a fish tank behind me with running water. What does it smell like? I've got a candle that currently smells like vanilla and Christmas time. So, just kind of like describe. You can see that there's like some clutter here on my walls, stuff like that. Think about like your immediate environment and kind of try to describe that because I think it helps to give your audience a sense of emotion and reflects, what your character is all about. See in the chat. How do you establish this in your script? Yes, I will. There's a slide on that. So just hang on, Parker. I will get to that. Okay, cool. So yeah, think about how it makes the character and therefore the audience feel. This to me, I am a maximalist. So this feels relaxing. For some people, all this clutter might be like, oh, what the heck is going on? But I've got ADHD, so I've got to have all the stuff on my board so that I see it and I don't forget. So, just different things might evoke different moods. And speaking of moods, we're going to do a little exercise. So when you look at this picture, right, what does it make you feel? If you want to type it in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. Warm, yes, calm. Yeah, that's all good. Okay, cool. So we can look at what contributes to that feeling of warmth and calm. Well, we've got the lighting for one. Got some warm fire, some warm, like essentially tones. There are different cool tones. So this blue is the cool tone, and then these like orangey reds are warm tones. And then we've got some people huddled together, sense of camaraderie. The fire is lit, green plants, which mean like life. We do have snow, but in this case, it's not meant to, like, we don't feel like it's, cold or barren. It's, adding to that aesthetic and kind of that joyous feeling we feel when it's like Christmas time. Sense of camaraderie and happiness, right? Okay, so now, how does this one make you feel? Anybody want to put it in the chat? Scared, yeah. Dark, beautiful. Gloom, perfect. These are all great adjectives. Exactly, right? So it's the same location, but what's changed? So we have these cool tones now in terms of like the darkness, these blues instead of these oranges. All the tables are gone. People are huddled together, but it's not in a sense of camaraderie, right? They're in strict rows and they're standing really straight. That makes you feel like there's, a sense of authority that's kind of been imposing. This fire is no longer, one more chat. Looks like a funeral, yeah. It feels like a funeral. This fire no longer seems warm and inviting. It seems kind of imposing and scary. And here we have some ice on the windows, and they don't feel like the snow. They feel cold and dark. And that's how you kind of evoke tone and atmosphere with your settings. So previous one, everybody's happy, it's a good time. First year at Hogwarts, Christmas time, happy Harry. This one is like last year, the Death Eaters have taken over. There's Dementors outside. Like everything has gone bad in the world. Voldemort is going to kill everybody. And that's how you kind of mesh the two so that it can enhance your story. I hope that helps. Okay, so speaking about enhancing things, I want to talk about kind of archetypal settings. And does anyone have any questions about like the feelings before I talk about archetypes? No, I think we're good. Okay, cool. Okay, so archetypal settings are basically what I just said. So settings that evoke a certain feeling, but they're feelings and things that we kind of, as a society, as a culture, as humans, we are already familiar with because of generations and generations of storytelling that's been passed down. So this is kind of a funny thing. So have you ever like read a horror story that takes place in broad daylight? No, not really. Like not too many do that because broad daylight usually symbolizes like clarity and knowledge and that there's light in terms of like light in your heart and soul as opposed to dark and evil. Get Out does that. Yeah. Yeah, that's that. So there are exceptions. And they take those archetypes and flip them around. Can you guys see like myself? Is this blocking? Anyway, okay. Yeah, but that's a really cool like stylistic choice that that is cool when you're a little bit advanced. Anyway, so all of these, whatever I say is not a hard and fast rule. Again, rules are meant to be broken, but I do think that you've got to learn the rules at least to break them. So yeah, okay. But yeah, that's why these kind of like dark and scary nights or like dark and gloomy night exists, because it generally does evoke a sense of immediate like unknowing, and fear. Otherwise, you have to work extra hard to evoke fear if you want to do it in broad daylight. Um, you know, so these are just kind of like shortcuts to get everybody to kind of understand what page you're on. And again, yeah, they can help reinforce tone and foreshadow things, which is kind of cool. Okay, so these are just some examples of some settings. So like river and generally water symbolizes, a rebirth because of a baptism. Garden, like life and purity. Like they have these like generic names. So just like a wasteland, which is something like some place where like things don't grow, and that's I'm alone and sad and maybe I don't have any internal growth in my character. Mazes like in Harry Potter, they that they're probably going to have obstacles in the maze and that your character's going to have to overcome things, stuff like that. So yeah, all of these can enhance where your story's going. So yeah, for example, like, Brother Where Art Thou, they literally are doing a baptism in the water. This helps to invoke tone. What does interior mean? Yes, I will get to that. INT means interior. Okay. Yes. And you kind of, this maze, as opposed to like one in like the French gardens, does not look inviting at all. If you're like in a chateau with like a little garden maze, that's like, oh, it's cute and romantic, right? This one looks scary and you know that there might be dangers lurking inside. This one, was like life. Again, with the water symbolizing rebirth, stuff like that. So, just certain things can enhance your story. Okay, there's some more. But I do want to talk about like night and day, because I'm going to give you an example from my own script that I'm working on. Because it seemed like last time people wanted examples from myself. So we'll do that. So we'll talk about that. Okay, when it comes to outlining your setting, these are some cool things that I like to think about. So we already kind of talked about place and time. Where does your story take place? What time period, right? Time and profluence. Profluence basically just means like how you let the readers know the information. So like if it's taking place over a year, how do you let them know that it's going to take place over a year? Do you like explicitly tell them, you know, this story is taking place over a year? Do you put like 6 months later, you know, 8 months later, or like 1 year later in your, dang it, what the heck is that called? I'm sorry, it totally escaped me. But you know what I'm talking about, like the text that like goes over the screen. Anyway, so basically explain how the readers will know at the time. Oh, how do you indicate a match cut in your script to show time? I have a slide on formatting, but I will save this question for that. But if you have any formatting questions, you can go ahead and look at that website and then go to like screenwriting formatting, and then it'll show you all the slides on how to format your stuff. Okay, cool. Yeah, so what techniques are you going to use to ensure that like your scene flows towards the denouement? And the denouement is just basically like the resolution. It comes from like the French word meaning like untying the knots. So as a writer, you're like weaving all these knots of like plot and conflict, and by the end you should untie them and see how things unravel. That's kind of what that means. In the previous slides you sent in the previous classes? Yes, it is. I will put it in the chat again, I suppose. There is a website. But if you got here a little bit later, then you won't see it in the chat. So let me just find that. Okay. Here we go. And then at the end, I'll like show the website, and then I'll show you guys how to view previous lectures. Okay. Here we go. Okay, okay. And then as far as story development, I think it's cool to think about explaining how your setting impacts the actual story that you're trying to tell. So again, in terms of like atmosphere and tone, how is that important to the development of your story? How is that indicative of, you know, the conflicts that your character has to face and how that makes them feel? And vice versa for the antagonist, how does that make the antagonist conflicts feel? How does that show inner growth? How does that help propel your story forward? Archetypes, again, like we talked about, so why certain archetypes? And like someone said, Get Out was a cool example. What about taking archetypes and flipping them? And how does that impact your story? Okay, cool. So this is an example from my own script that I'm working on. Takes place in the takes place in the mid-90s, in a small fictional town in Texas. I don't know if this is like legal to say, but again, sometimes there is like not much thought into it. I chose it purely for aesthetics, and that's okay. But if I chose it purely for aesthetics, I do have to eventually kind of use those aesthetics to support my story. Well, I don't have to, but like it makes a better story in my opinion. Okay, so I thought that there's a rugged beauty about a dilapidated town that's on the verge of like being bought up by corporations. So if you think about like late 90s, I don't know if you're from like anywhere that's like not LA or New York, things were growing really rapidly. And you kind of are seeing it today that small businesses are going out of business. Things kind of look like a ghost town, and Walmart start popping up, right? Targets start popping up. So it creates a sense of uncertainty in time. So yeah, there's some subjects of changing times and the people that get left behind. I chose Texas specifically because, well, because I grew up there. But there's some racial prejudices in very small towns in certain places in America, and then I guess everywhere. Cultural differences that can end up hurting communities that are just traditionally more susceptible to, you know, not necessarily misfortune, but just being seen as other. Anyway, um, so this I kind of wrote for y'all, but then I started thinking I should think about like how is a small decaying town in Texas different from one in like the Midwest, right? I chose Texas just because that's what I know. Um, and you can definitely, there's a book that I really like. It's called Write What You Don't Know, and you can definitely do that, but it is easier if you do write what you know. And you take kind of inspiration from your own life experiences. Um, and I should also maybe think about like what season is it? Like we talked about the snow. The season could like complement some type of setting and like say something about how the characters feel. Um, it does ice in Texas, and it's a land of like extremes. So in the summer it's super hot, and in the winter it's like freezing. So maybe that could be important to know like extreme emotions, because it does take place throughout like the course of a year. Again, like what does it like look and smell like? What does it sound like? Um, where does my most of my action take place specifically? Okay. Time. So preference means like how I tell the audience what's going on. I don't explicitly tell them they're in the 90s, but I instead, use cars and the way people dress and like the lack of availability of cell phones, and like only having landlines. So there is a way, like, to add a little bit of mystery. You don't explicitly have to tell people I'm in like 1997. You can totally say something without actually saying it. If that makes sense. As far as pacing, the about a year's time. It's going to be linear, but there are gaps in between, and I kind of like that you're just not going to get to see what happens in between. We're gonna start at a place, there's going to be a gap, and then the it's like a little girl with her dad, so like she might have slightly longer hair, and then you'll know that there's a passage of time. Yeah, there we go. And then so my story is essentially parents divorce and a little girl gets placed by this like new family court person, with her dad, because she's like mixed and he's white, and the mom has like a kind of very strong demeanor, and cultural differences lead him to believe that like she's being abused by her mom, but really like her dad is like not fit to be a dad, and he like drinks and like gets prostitutes and whatever, right? Like he loves her, but he's just not fit to be a good dad. So they end up like losing their apartment, and living in like a motel and stuff like that. So she's gonna end up in a new environment, like looking a little bit more disheveled than she did. At the beginning, like nice and clean, nice clothes that fit. Um, as the year progresses, kids grow pretty fast, so maybe clothes that no longer fit her and pants that are a little bit above the ankle because she's growing. Fun fact, this did not happen to me. So this is just a cool idea that I thought of, that I could use my own experiences as being like a Hispanic woman and like living in Texas and thinking about it. Um, so yeah. Okay. And then story development. Um, so if I didn't set my story in a rural town, um, or someplace similar that, you know, is rural, um, as opposed to like if I set my story in LA, they probably would have like placed the little girl with her mom in Los Angeles, because priority is usually given to the mom. And even in the 90s, like even in the 70s and 60s, there's a pretty big Hispanic population in LA, um, as opposed to small town in Texas. So they kind of understood, and like Chicanos were a thing. So yeah, the family court counselor construes like the mom of acting in a way that's like common for Hispanics, um, like just like kind of like yelling at her. And my mom, she used to like grab my arm really hard. Um, that's that's like kind of scary for Americans, but like for Hispanics, it's kind of like normal. And we joke about like the chancla and like hitting kids, but like it's not okay to hit kids. Anyway, but it was more common 30 years ago. So he's like, whoa, what the heck? This lady is abusing her kid. And he puts her with her dad. So yeah, so think about how if you were not where you are, then how could your story be different? And why does it need to be set specifically in the location that you have set it? Um, and then again, like I thought about something in addition. So how does my setting continue to impact the story after the inciting incident? Not just her getting placed, but how do the interactions continue between like her dad when it takes out like a brown girl in the society? Someone in chat, I like to joke that a parental Hispanic tactic is threatening your children with kidnapping. Yeah, that is so true. Yeah, it's nice. Anyway, so yeah, so how do people look at them when this like white man goes with this little brown girl to like an arcade or something, or to like eat? um how do they treat him versus how do they treat her, and kind of like those microaggressions that happen. Anyway, and then archetypes. So you don't necessarily, when you're creating your story, have to think about it in terms of like, I'm making this so that it can be this particular archetype so that I can like symbolize this. And as you become a more seasoned writer, you'll just kind of, I don't know, do it naturally. So I didn't think about, you know, my small town being a wasteland. I was just like, oh yeah, this would be cool. I want to do it in a small town so that I can do blah 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 blah. But if I really think about it, it does serve to kind of denote the loneliness that the little girl feels. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with places that are kind of rural, but you've legit got to drive like 20 miles to get to like a nice place that has maybe like a Walmart or whatever. And it's just in Texas, it used to be not anymore, I guess, but in some places it used to be just lands and rows of just like grass and cows. And you drive there for miles before you ever saw like a house or a gas station. Um, so just how does that affect my character? And yeah, there's no future in a dying town. Um, and again, there are a lot of scenes with the dad and the little girl that take place at night, especially as like things with the dad and his like self-destructiveness gets worse. Um, and if you look at the previous slides or whatever later, you'll see that like night denotes a feeling of uncertainty and like fear, like we talked about. Um, and I kind of like did that subconsciously, but if you think about it, like that's pretty cool. That whenever she's with her mom, she sees her in the daytime because her mom represents the complete antithesis, even though the guy like thought it was the opposite of her dad. And she's like got it together, and there's safety and order, and knowledge in terms of like she knows what to expect from her mom. Even if she's strict, like she knows that she's going to get a meal and be safe and warm for the night, right? um but with her dad, like there's no telling what's going on, where their meals coming from, if they're going to have enough money, um how she's going to get to school, stuff like that. So yeah, kind of cool. And I invite you guys to all think about that. Again, you don't have to go super far and think about all these archetypes and blah 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 before you plan your story. It's totally okay to just plan the story. And if you need help with 3-act structure, there's slides and some lectures on our website about the 3-act structure that could help. But then just kind of think about your setting, and kind of tweak it to fit and to enhance. Okay, cool. So here we go. Whoever asked me, how do you write setting in a script? So in your slug line, a slug line is that thing at the very top where you see like the int, like house, day, blah blah blah, right? So you've got to denote if it's interior int or exterior ext. and you always go from like small to big. I know we thought about it in terms of like big to small, but when you're putting it down on the script, you go from small to big. So like interior, kids' bedroom, like house, day, right? Or like corner of the living room, Amanda's house, nighttime. Um, anyway, stuff like that. Okay, and you have to denote immediate time. So in your slug line, that's not when you put like 90s. It's usually either night or day. But you can put like moments later, morning, mid-afternoon if you want to be more specific. But you can usually just get away with like night or day. You can also put later if it's like a scene that's taking place later. And then in your action line, which are like, the words of text and prose that you actually like write your stuff out. Below that line, you can include your time period and descriptive details. So this is what it looks like. Here we go. So here's your exterior, EXT, and then you're in a cemetery, and that's enough. If that's all you want to write, that's totally fine. This person who wrote the Grand Budapest Hotel puts a period, but it's usually a dash. It's not a huge thing, as long as you can kind of see what's going on. And then day. And then here it's also day, but you can put like day or night, whatever. Okay. And then here, this block of text is what's called an action line. Then they put the present, and you totally can do that, or you can just leave it blank. If you leave it blank, it's going to be like inferred that you're talking about the present, and then you can, give them clues like I will, or like I did, and talk about like cars and whatever, and then they'll kind of get the idea. Okay, so then we talk about time here, and then this is going from small, so we're in a graveyard, and then to big, so you're a city center, and then to even bigger, of an Eastern European capital. So that's how you kind of write that. And then you start describing things. So frost covers the ground. So you kind of have that image, right? There are stones between rows of leafless trees. And then, blah, 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 describing characters. And then you see the hotel, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Same thing here. So interior study, 20 years ago. And then we have a cluttered office. So you can kind of get that image. French windows, ornate moldings. And now you have a visual image of what you can see. Books, shelves, stacks, first editions. So that the fact that they put like first editions might be important, meaning that they have the money to find first edition books because those are pretty expensive. Dictionaries, blah, 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 paperbacks, but they also have paperbacks. So maybe that means that they are a humble, like well-rounded person that like uses a study. Translations and languages. So they don't have to specifically describe the character and say like, this character is a humble, like well-rounded, learned individual who is a polyglot. They do it by inference, and that's how setting can impact and affect your story and your characters. So you get an idea of what the character is like based on, the area that they inhabit. Yeah, typewriter on a desk, extensive collection of literary prizes. So yeah, you don't specifically have to say these people, like this person won a bunch of prizes. We kind of understand that they're going to be a pretty learned individual, which is kind of cool. Okay, there was a question. Here we go. How do you blah, blah, blah? How do you write something? What was that question? How do you establish in a script but not over explain? Is there such a thing as over explaining? I mean, yes and no. Yes, there is such a thing just because with screenplays, you do have a page limit. It's a soft 120 pages. Like people will read like 125. If you get up to like 132, most execs, unless it's like amazing, are gonna not want to read it just because it's too long and like our attention spans are getting shorter. So yes, that's I mean, in terms of is there such thing as too much? Otherwise, no. And if you're kind of like Shakespeare, I like this comparison a lot. Not in terms of setting, but just in terms of like an action. If you read Romeo and Juliet at the very end, he just writes they fight, and he leaves it completely up to the director to decide what that fight looks like. So he doesn't have to describe anything. And same thing, stuff like that. If you're directing it, and you already know what you want in your head, I mean, you don't have to write anything really, just kind of like bullet points. But if you want to leave it up to the interpretation of the director, you just can put a cemetery, and then they'll envision whatever cemetery they want. Or like this is pretty descriptive, like this study. So I always say that the descriptions should enhance the story, and any of the actions should enhance the story, and they should reveal something about the characters, or the place that they inhabit. And that whatever they reveal should work to propel the plot forward. I hope that answers your question. But what if there are action scenes? In terms of setting, what if you could elaborate, I'd appreciate that. Itchy. I can drink some water. And if you have any more questions, you're more than welcome to type them in the chat, and then I will answer them. Best of my ability. I don't know, I guess I'll try to answer. In terms of action, oh yes. Like at the start of an action scene, if they go through locations, it seems like it would be more than a page. Yes. So if you look at on the website, I will show you how to like format a montage. Even if you don't want it as a montage, you can literally format it the same way. Just like put a more descriptive slug line. So essentially it would just be exterior, like whatever, if they're fighting in a cemetery day, and then you would put like, if you want to describe that, like he punches them and like he kicks him and he falls and blah blah blah, like he falls into the grave, into like a underground mausoleum, and then you would put like interior underground mausoleum, and then it's like they fight and he like smashes him on one of like the coffin things, and like he pushes him inside of the coffin, but like there's no bottom, and he falls again into like a parallel dimension, and then exterior parallel dimension nighttime, right? So that's essentially what you do. Just your slug line where you are at, your action line, slug line again, action line, slug line again, action line. I hope that helps. Where will you show us to find it? Yes, I will show you at the very end to find all your stuff on the website. What if your slug lines consistently have night? I find it pretty annoying. Yes, there is a word like continuous. Okay, so in that event that I just described, where the action is happening continuously, then you could put continuous. So like exterior cemetery day, he punches him and he kicks him, whatever, and he falls into the mausoleum, interior mausoleum continuous. And then he whatever like pushes him into the coffin, into the parallel universe, exterior parallel universe continuous. That is if something is happening immediately. So like if somebody is in a living room and they step into the kitchen, and like as soon as they lay down their step, that is a continuous thing. So interior kitchen continuous. If it's like just a little bit later, like moments later, like I am in my living room and I answer my phone, and then moments later, I am now in the kitchen and I am talking on the phone. That can be denoted as moments later or later. So stuff like that. Those are usually the main ones that you're going to use. And we can, I guess, look at that today when we look at the other stuff. Okay, cool. So any more questions about how setting, oh, what the heck? How setting like impacts the story? Nothing? Okay. Okay, cool. So now that you know all about that, let's look at some examples. Here we go.
You saved the day again, Woody.
So what does this look like? Got some like nice clouds, wallpaper in the background. That, what does that denote? If you want to type stuff in the chat. But just a sense of playfulness, right? Definitely feel like this is a kid's room, cluttered. All this stuff, toys. Seems like a child that is well taken care of. He's got some plastic stuff. All this furniture looks kind of middle class, right? So it's a little middle class American family. What time period is this? It does look like a 90s house, and it was made in the 90s. So at that time, it does look modern day. You know, it looks cozy, nice warm lights in the daytime, happiness. It looks like it is lived in, like they have a family. All these pictures of family on the walls, on like the mantle. Right? Looks like they spend a lot of nice time together. So stuff like that. Wow, it's his birthday, so that denotes birthday. All these balloons, blah blah blah. And streamers must seem like the mom really cares about the kid. You know, to go through all that effort to decorate the house for this kid's birthday. Kind of cool, right? Okay, so we kind of get that. And that's how, you know, we get some feeling out of the setting. Here's another one. Let's look at Blade Runner. What does this look like? Wow. Spooky. So what do you get from this? We got some dark blue tones. Huge city. We hear off-world colonies. Cold, beautiful. We can, oh, more people in the chat. Yes, synthetic. It does not feel real. You get the sense that people kind of live in poverty. They're kind of like in rags, maybe. A lot of pollution because everything is too close together, too cluttered. Yes, clustered. Beautiful. That's perfect. You guys are getting it. You guys are so smart. Alright, let's skip ahead a little bit. Oh, no. What the heck? I don't know why I went all the way over there. Okay. Oh, I don't think I can touch it because of... Let me try. Okay, that's fine. We'll just let it play through. Yeah, but these little ship things kind of look ominous. You got these searchlights going on, so that gives a sense of feeling like maybe we're being watched. A lot of signs. Consumerism is very important. Yes, dystopian. That is perfect. That is exactly the feeling. Futuristic. Beautiful. It's raining, so that means that, you know, people in their faces, they're not looking super happy. They're looking kind of glum.
A new life awaits you in the off-world colony.
There we go. See, they're talking about a new life.
Begin again in a golden land of opportunity and
Land of opportunity, because this land does not look like it's full of opportunity. Yes, constant advertisement. That's perfect. So the capitalism has reached its end, and the people there are suffering because of it. Right? And in contrast, this is like a nice, cozy area in terms of, like, it's cluttered, but it does feel cozy, as opposed to the coldness of, like, the outside street. Which is kind of cool, kind of interesting. So yeah, that's a Blade Runner. That's pretty cool, right? That helps to serve to set the tone. Any questions about Toy Story and or Blade Runner and how those two are super different, but we both get really clear images of what we're supposed to be looking at. That's it. Wow, we're done. Okay, cool. So now that we're done, let me show you our website. Yeah, so you should have set decoration in mind while writing. I mean, yes, to an extent. Again, if you're directing it, then go ahead, do all you want. But I always say that, you know, you don't want to overstep your bounds on the director, but if it is absolutely essential to the plot, and if it helps convey something, then yes, go ahead, be as descriptive as you want. Okay, let's look at our website. And then we'll look at the how to format slides so that you can learn how to format some stuff. Okay. So I put the website on the chat. This is what it looks like. We got home, recorded lectures, right? So this is, if we scroll down just on the home page, here are the lecture slides, and then you can like download them. And then our Instagram, where like I also put the lectures. But if you want to see the actual recordings, then you click on recorded lectures, and then you can see them. And it'll take you to the YouTube link, or like it'll embed it here. You can see everything about that. Okay, so let's go here to our homepage. And then we'll look at screenplay format. So let's download this and we'll open it. Okay, so here we go. Here's the first versions. Okay, so this is what a title page looks like. Here's your screenplay title, right? Written by is where your name goes. That's usually it. You don't really have to put the based on or draft date or your contact details. Yeah, here we go. Here's some examples. So like here in Bruges, it's just title, name, right? Coraline, a screenplay by whoever this is, and then it's based on this novel. This one is one that has all of this combined. So like title, and you don't have to necessarily, like it says here, you got to underline it. You don't have to do that. Again, how these are like in different fonts or whatever, it's totally okay. Okay. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in all caps too, or like bold or whatever. Just kind of, you know, title written by blah, blah, blah. So written by this guy, inspired by blah, blah, blah. This is an old one that, because this is how they used to be written in like 1967. It's the title, screenplay by, like what draft it is, what the date was, and like their contact information. We just don't do that anymore because back then, like you needed the contact information because you would like mail these things in, and they had no way of like reaching you. But now when you go to meetings, they like get your number and email it. It's fine. Okay, so these are some pretty cool ones, and you can be as pretty as you want to be with the font. Got some pictures here. Got a nice cool thing. Okay, so here are some slug lines, right? Interior or sophist day. Then your action line. So you've got to establish where the scene takes place, inside or outside, then add the location of the scene. So day, blah, blah, blah. And like we were talking about, when a scene directly continues from the previous scene, it's continuous. If it's a couple minutes later or like, you know, moments, then you can put moments later in your slug line or just later. For a scene that takes place, both interior and exterior, so usually like fight scenes in a moving car, like where they're sticking their head out the window and like fighting or whatever and like punching some guy, then you can use both interior, exterior, and then you just describe the fight in your action line. Yeah, and screenwriting software will generally do it for you. A free one is called Celtex. I will put it in the chat. You can write 3 scripts for free, and they'll just format it for you. But Like if you're doing it on Word, I really don't recommend it because it's really hard. But put it in all caps. Okay. Okay, action lines. So that's this part right here. And that's basically describing what's going on. How do you indicate a scene being moved in final draft? What do you mean? I don't, if you can elaborate, I'd appreciate that. Here's your action line. So they go right beneath this slug line. Always written in the present tense. So as opposed to books, things like happen in the past. But a movie, like you're watching, even if it's in the past, you're watching it as it happens then. So you always want to write it in the present tense. Okay, let's see. Why are those 2 dashes there? That's a great example. Okay, here we go. So that is kind of like a stylistic choice. When I want to introduce a character, but I kind of want to like, so you can see like it reflects off of fading eggshell blue walls onto the faces of, and then I wanted to note that there's like a mental separation that you need to pay attention because I'm introducing my character for the first time, Anna, and then Tom. You also use these when you're like cutting people off in terms of dialogue. I'll show you later. So you don't necessarily have to. You can just totally write faces of without the dashes, Anna and blah, blah, blah in the same sentence. But that's a purely stylistic choice. So when you're introducing characters, that comes a little bit later. Can also capitalize props and sounds. And then avoid camera movements if you can. And transitions like cut to, because like we understand that it's a movie and we know that the scene is gonna cut to something, right? So all you need is a slug line like that denotes that you're gonna cut to something. It's not terribly wrong, like people are not gonna throw your script away. It just, if you're writing cut to for like everything, it gets a little bit tiresome. Okay, Celtics is great and it's a small company, yes. If you have any more information, Parker, on how to indicate a scene being moved, or if I answered your question, let me know. Because look, I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, so yeah, avoid transitions like that. And then like we see, again, like it's not, they're not gonna throw your script away. But it does look a little bit amateurish because like it's a movie, so like of course we're gonna see something. So you can just say, so like for example, this one says interior, whatever bedroom night. We see Jacob's head slightly out the door. You can just say like Jacob's head hangs slightly out the door. And in the room, we see Patricia. You can literally just say Patricia, blah, 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 is lying peacefully on her side. And that's, I think, more impactful. Okay, let me see. Like if you want to move a scene before the previous, no, I'm sorry. I don't know how to do that. I rewrite the whole thing. Sorry. I'm not the best with technology. So yeah, I apologize. I just rewrite it. I hope that helps. I'm sorry. If anyone knows how you like, I'm guessing like if you're dragging a thing, right? You want to drag the whole scene or like move it somewhere. But I have no idea how to do that. If anyone knows, please let Parker know. Okay. Yeah, and camera movements, unless you're directing it, and unless, again, this is not a terribly bad thing, but make sure that it is absolutely essential. The certificate falls and we push in on the back of the frame to see written in Sharpie. We kind of, again, like already understand in our mind that we want to see something. So really think about, is it absolutely essential that the camera needs to push in, and do I absolutely need to tell the director this? And the scene can be filmed in no other way. Otherwise, the information will not get across. Then I would say direct. Otherwise, leave it up to him because he'll probably get it anyway. Okay, copy and paste, I guess. Yeah, that's copy and paste. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So how do you write characters? When you're introducing them for the first time, put them in all caps. Then in parentheses, put their age. I, in terms of like casting purposes, don't like to say 32 or like 33, because it's limiting in terms of like, do I really need specifically a 32-year-old person? So, mid 30s is fine, like 40s, middle-aged, teenager. If it's absolutely essential that she needs to be 15 because she's having like quinceañera, or 16 because she's, doing her sweet 16, then like write it in. But, if it's not super important, you don't have to. Okay, so all caps, your age, and then you describe them. It can be as detailed as you want it to be. I like to describe in terms of kind of getting a tone and feeling for that person. A lot of people write like they're wearing a black sweater, and have like long brown hair and blah blah blah. Again, it may be limiting in terms of casting, and if like that black or like red sweater isn't super essential to the plot, like what if a red sweater is because they need to be identifiable later if they get lost, then that's important. But if it's not, then I like to describe just in terms of feelings. Okay, got some questions in the chat. I have to go. Hope everyone enjoys. Yes, if you have to go, don't worry about it. You will have this recording later on. Okay, what if the character is anonymous? I usually just say what they're wearing. No, yeah, that's totally fine. If they're anonymous, then that's okay. I also, if they're anonymous, think about how are they standing? How are they walking? Like do they walk with a swagger? Are they like hunched and cradled? You know what I mean? So kind of feelings like that, if that makes sense. Okay. So yeah, all caps, blah, blah, blah. After the action description, when a character speaks, we start with their name. So that's how you put their name. And then that's their dialogue. And then here's a dash. That means that she's being interrupted. And then if she's being interrupted, then you put like whoever interrupts her name and then dash dash, and then continue whatever he's interrupting her with. And their name is what's called a character ID. So like I give in like previous examples, if the guy's name is like Timothy Chalamet the Fifth, I don't want to write Timothy Chalamet the Fifth every single time. So I can just write Tim or like Big T. And that's my character ID. So it doesn't necessarily have to be their name. A lot of people think, well, do I have to like flesh out my characters and think about their last names? Like, no, if you don't want to, you don't have to. If it's not important. If it's important that people know that like her name is Ana Hernandez or like Garcia or whatever, because she is Hispanic, and that like is a plot point, and it's going to be used in some way, then sure. But if not, like it's fine. You don't have to. Okay, questions here. So like blank is walking very slowly, killer like. Yes, I would not say blank though. I would say like a man. And then man would be in like all caps or whatever, or like a hooded figure, and like hooded figure would be in all caps. And then later you would like if he takes off the hood or whatever, you would say this hooded figure is well. Okay, yeah, Okay. How do you do multiple people speaking at the same time? That is a wonderful question. You just put them side by side. Oh, do I have that here? No, I don't. But basically what you do is if they're talking, you got like a column here, and then you got like a column over here. And then you just put the two dialogue side by side. Let me Google this actually. Side by side dialogue screenplay. Will that show you images? Yeah, here we go. So like this. I don't know if you can see this, but you see like it says Steven, and then he's like talking, and then Michelle, and they're like talking. And then both. Right. But this means that they're talking at the same time. So that the actors know what to say. This one too. Talking at the same time. Okay. So yeah, dialogue is centered to the middle of the page. And here are the dashes, right? So she gets interrupted, and here's like an action line, and then he interrupts her. So there's like a little dash here. Okay, continueds. Continueds are used when someone, like the same person, is talking, but it's interrupted by an action line. So right, he's talking, he's giving his little dialogue, then there's some action line, but like nobody else is talking after him, like he's still talking. So you would write continued next to his name. Okay, and then a voiceover. Just put it next to the name too. VO. So it's used when like people are talking over action. So like you can't see them. There's like a video, I'll show you. It'll explain it better. What is question? What if the time of day is unknown because I don't want the reader to know? Can I put something like unknown in this line?
No. That's stupid.
Okay, that was not very nice. No. Okay, if you don't have like something nice or constructive to say, I would prefer you not say anything at all. Because this is like a place where people can learn. And I don't think that's helpful. Anyway, but oh, he said no, that's stupid. My answer is no, but it's not stupid. That was a good question. And I don't want to have to like mute people because that's just not nice. I would leave it blank and then write it in the action line. Whatever your setting is, if it's like unknown what time it is, kind of denote that. Or you can put it as, people often do this, they use parentheses to kind of denote footnotes. And they use that as like their own action line, or they put it in like caps or bold or whatever. A lot of people do it with language, and they put it like in italicized letters, like everything from here on will be written in blah, 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 blah. So you as a writer can like break the fourth wall or whatever and talk to somebody if you wanted to note that. Write it in your action line and just use like a different font. Usually italicized. I got to head out, but thank you so much. Yeah, of course. Thank you for joining. Okay. One more question. What's the difference between VO and Here we go. Here's the difference. Okay. So voiceover is when a character is speaking over the action, right? But it isn't heard by other characters in the scene. Here's an off-screen, which means like a character speaking, but it's heard by other characters. We just can't physically see them. So here's an example. Where's my video? Oh, hold on. Let me stop sharing my screen. I've got a video, but I've got to switch because that was a PDF. Okay, here we go. So let me present this. Present. Okay, here we go. Here's an example of a
Will you
voiceover.
take a look at that? Pretty pathetic, huh?
Right, so
Well,
there's
you'll
some
never
action,
believe this, but that llama
and
you're
he's
looking
not
at was
actually
once
talking.
a human being, and not just any human
but the
being.
guy is talking
That guy was an
over
emperor.
the action as a voiceover. And off screen
I've changed my mind. I see now you've been
is where you see him, you can hear him talking on the phone
Almost at the finish line. And you and I
through
can
the door.
be official.
Don't even try.
Here like this. Okay, so that whatever you hear on the phone, that's an off screen because he's still physically inhabiting that space, but you just can't see him. Does that make sense?
Don't be silly. We're almost
And
at
then
the
I would
finish
also,
line.
telephone calls are kind of weird. I would also write this as an off screen because we see her, right? And so she inhabits like the same plane on the screen.
Can be official.
But when
Don't
we cut
even
back to
try.
him, we just
You know,
can't
I
see her
figured
anymore,
it
but we
all
already saw
out.
her. So that's
You
an off screen.
pretended to love me. You
Same
made me
thing.
a bunch of promises
Off screen
so that I
because
would come
she can
down
hear
here
him,
and
can't
place
see
the
him.
receiver on the stage in the middle.
So yes, a narrator is a voiceover. They're mostly, that's what a voiceover is. But a lot of phone calls are also voiceovers if you don't see them and if you want to have it like clearly stated. but yeah, phone calls are kind of tricky. It's really up to you. It's a stylistic choice. A lot of people, like if they're kind of muffled, then they don't write it as a voiceover. They just do like off screen, or they don't even like write the dialogue in. They just leave it up to the actor. So phone calls are like up to you. But essentially, it's like if they're inhabiting the same space, it's an off screen. If you can't see them, and they're more like a narrator, whoops, then it's a voiceover. Okay, parentheticals. So voiceover and off screen like tell you where they are in terms of like physical space. Parentheticals tell you like how something should be performed. Here we go. So like he's talking, right? And then beat means that like he should take a pause. You can also write pause here, like they do here, pause. That means that like it's absolutely essential that they take a pause longer than a period to say their next line. And then this person smiles. So it's absolutely essential that she's got to smile while saying something, right? Again, like she's not taking the bait. I would also be super careful about these more descriptive ones, just because, you know, you want to leave it up to the actor's interpretation. But if it's absolutely essential that you need to know that she is not taking the bait, you can write it in. And then like remembering something, hesitates, angry at herself, blah, blah, blah. So that's how something should be performed. Oh, you had a hard time getting into the presentation because you hit join rather than Zoom. Oh no. Wonder if there's some way so all those people don't miss your next presentation. I don't know about that. Yeah, maybe when it says like join on the Eventbrite, it should take you to like a page and then it should have like the Zoom link, right? I think. I don't know. But I've also seen like that a lot of people register and then they just don't show up, which is okay. Like that's pretty normal too. But all like the Eventbrite things that I've done, that's what they do. You click join and then it takes you to a thing. I guess next time I could send out just like the Zoom invite to everybody via email. So if you want to join next time, I guess I'll do that. Okay. So a pre-lap is when something like dialogue usually or like sound starts before you actually see it. I'll give you an example visually of what that looks like. But you just write it in parentheses. If you want to write a pre-lap, you just put it in parentheses. If it's dialogue and if it's an action, then you put pre-lap, colon, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's an example of what that looks
I've
like.
gotten real concerned over what's going to happen.
This you'd
with all
think the
garbage.
dialogue is a
I
voiceover
mean, we've got so much of it.
because you can't see her, but it's actually
You
not
know, I mean, we have to run out of places to put this stuff eventually.
because she's
Last
talking, but it's not an off screen either because she doesn't finish her sentence. That's the main difference. If it's an off screen, then they like finish what they're saying. But here she's like in the middle of saying
Eventually.
something. So it cuts to
Last
her
time
like finishing her sentence.
I started feeling this
And
way,
that's a
it's
pre-lap because it means that it starts and you can't see it, and then it finishes and you can see it. So that's
that
kind of
barge
cool.
was stranded, and it was going
Weird
around
thing.
the island, and nobody would claim it.
Okay, I hope that made sense. Okay, here's a montage. And that's kind of like how I described if you want to write your action stuff, your action fighting sequences. But the easiest way to denote a montage, there's a bunch of ways, but this I think is the easiest. Just write begin montage, and then write your slug lines and your action. Slug line, action, and then when you're done, end montage. In terms of fight scenes too, even if they're not specifically a montage, just take that out and then you can write your slug lines and your action, slug lines and your action. Okay, cool. Here's an example.
How long is this going to take?
You can't rush art.
Right? So we just cut into different images. Different images that cut, but they all make sense. That's a montage. Wow, so cool. Okay, so you get that. Flashbacks and dream sequences, I write them literally the same, just because I think that's the easiest. There are a lot of weird ways you can write it, and you can also like not even write it in that it's a dream sequence if you want to make things interesting and the character, like if he doesn't know he's in a dream, then I wouldn't note it. Anyway, but same thing, begin flashback, slugline action, and then it's over, end flashback. Dream sequence, blah, 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 and then end dream sequence. That's pretty much it. But yeah, put it all together. You've got your scene heading, interior, exterior, where you're at, day or nighttime, or like what, continuous, later, moments later, blah, blah, blah. Introducing a character for the first time in all caps. Action line. A sound is in all caps. Also props if they're important. Okay, I thought it was a lot of good info and almost missed it. Okay, I'm sorry, Gordon. Yeah, I guess I'll send out an email with the Zoom invite next time. Okay. Rufus, voiceover, and then if you want to denote how you should perform it sarcastically, here's some parentheticals, right? Repeating himself, blah, blah, blah. And then here's what it looks like on the screen, all put together. Oh shit, sorry. Wow, so cool. Closes around the ratatouille. He's whisked away. Here's that stylistic choice, right, to a flashback. Oh, whoops. Here we go. So here's a flashback. And again, there's different ways to denote it. But if you saw a bicycle, that was in all caps. Here's a moments later. Here's him in all caps because he's being introduced. And then the present rushes back. And that denotes end of flashback. His pen is in all caps. It's a prop. It clatters. That's a sound. Action. He blinks. How it's performed as he eats, he has to say it.
I demand to know!
I can't remember the last time I asked a waiter to give
Emphasis
my
on the finger,
compliments to the
so it's
chef.
super important.
And now I find myself in the extraordinary position of having my waiter be the chef.
Thanks, but I'm just your waiter tonight.
Then who do I thank for the meal?
Excuse me a minute?
See, they're visible through the window. We didn't have to change locations.
You must be the
If
chef.
you wish to meet the chef, you will have to wait until all the other customers have gone.
So be it.
Cool, right? So that's what it looks like. That's it, we're done. Okay, guys. Do you have any questions for me? I have a short screenplay. That is about 6 pages long. Plan on turning it into a short film. If I could read it, I'd really appreciate it. Yes. Oh, I'm not a masterclass screenwriter. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, you can totally send it to me. To the email that I will email you guys all the slides. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording. Oh, whoops.